So we are going to start the second question and answer session. So we have received a couple of reports and maybe questions. So we will start the session with the written reports.
Report number 1, Thero and Saranai Bhante, sitting meditation. In the morning session with the advisors on sitting meditation by the Bhante, I followed each and every guidance and starting to meditate. Some disturbances had to be faced by scratching my finger over and over again because of an ant, a kadia, biting my finger when I cleaned the premises in the morning. I tried to concentrate to the present moment and fairly did for that moment. After the yoga session, I did the sitting meditation at a stretch for about half an hour to my best ability. During that succession meditation time, I had a small nap, I suppose. Bhante, please advise to concentrating mind on such a situation, scratching over and over. Triple gem bless you, Bhante.
Scratching and sleeping, or so actually we just also discussed now after a yoga session or after a kind of a good exercise session. So you are going to a more relaxed posture and it can jump or switch into a little nap. So it indicates that you are fairly relaxed. So it is not a harmful thing. But at the same time, after a yoga session, after a very good exercise session, if you did it mindfully, and if you can spend some time in a more awake but relaxed mood, so that's also much better. So because we have prepared a very balanced posture, very active, nerve system. At the same time, if we can maintain that mindfulness, awakefulness, in a more relaxed, comfortable manner, so that means we have come to a fair evenness of the mind. So going to a little bit more could be the sleepiness, but if you are able to maintain that without going to sleepiness, but awakefulness with a very relaxed body and the mind, so that would be much better. So it's a kind of, I feel it's a kind of trial and error method. So how are we going to avoid getting to the sleepiness but still maintaining a very relaxed mood? So through the meditation, that's what we are trying to achieve. So how are we going to find this balance? So sometimes we are overstretching ourselves. Sometimes we do too much investigation. It can lead to restlessness. Atipaggahitam viriyam uddachanu patitam samadhissa paripantu. So if we are putting too much effort, atipaggahitam viriyam uddachanu patitam. So the mind becomes restless. So it's a hindrance to the samadhi, samadhissa paripantu. So how are we having enough effort, necessary amount of effort or optimal amount of effort, so that the mind is also well concentrated and the samadhi is there and there is no restlessness. So these are all in a way kind of trial and error, because we can simply say through words, but you yourself have to recognize within your mindfulness session, where is this middle, where is this balance point. So daily it can vary, and again from session to session it can vary. So it's a kind of a self-investigation in a way. Each session is a kind of a new experiment for you to recognize all these balancing points. So slowly we are, it doesn't mean that every time we are failing, but more and more when you become successful, it becomes your reference. So I have achieved some kind of a release state, I have achieved some kind of a balanced state. Okay, let me bring my attention to that level. So that is the reference. That becomes the most comfortable state becomes the reference. So even say you are maintaining a release mind, so it also can grow, it also can evolve. So you may become more and more relaxed. But even though you become more and more relaxed, how not to fall asleep and how not to latch on to something and connect with something, rather maintaining yourself in a more relaxed mood. So these are all in a way very kind of our own internal experiments. Yeah.
Report number 2. Dear Bhante, after listening to your comments given today in the morning soon after the guided meditation session, I thought of writing a report on what happened at that session. After a 15 minutes of walking session, I sat for a sitting session, watched in breath, out breath. Breath became calm very soon. For about 5 minutes, I was able to see slight gaps only on the out breath. These are only momentarily. After that, as the whole thing was very calm without any thoughts, I started watching the mind, but there were no thoughts at all, and it was not blissful unlike other days. Time to time, I felt my neck bending, and I made an effort to keep it straight. This was happening continuously, but I was aware of what's happening. Early morning, 5 o'clock session was also similar. Normally, after a sitting session, I feel quite relaxed, but since of late, I don't feel that way. Appreciate your valuable advice, Bhante. May you achieve all your Dhamma desires in this very life.
May I know who has written it? Yes? Okay. Every time I can quickly catch you. So what happened basically, so is there any kind of dismissal of your previous balanced state, or is it?
It's the same like Bhante, but previously when I do my morning session, that spirit goes on the whole day really, and it's like, as I say, it's very blissful.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's a bit lethargic, and like the session goes the same way really.
Right.
I don't get much thoughts, and I watch those also.
If I say other than the feeling,
yes,
either it is blissful or lethargic, or the same kind of boring. All the other aspects similar. Same.
But that. Like sleepiness, like I don't sleep. I know that I'm not sleeping, but neck falls down and I keep it up, and it's an effort for me, like to do that.
It can happen. Now, say whatever the samadhi. So when we are experiencing it for the first time and say very close, that becomes more blissful. It's a more enjoyable kind of an experience. But more we practice that, it becomes a kind of a natural state. So then it is no more blissful. So it's a very common feature for all the samadhis, all the different kinds of concentrations. As we are experiencing it for the first time, or we are new to that, so we are enjoying that. It becomes more very new experience. So it will be more joyful. But more we are practicing further and further, it becomes a more natural and relaxed, and in a way a more equanimous state. So that is quite natural. So it is actually a maturing. It is not that we always can maintain the blissful state. No. So that blissful, happy, pleasurable state always will mature in the equanimity. So the kind of maturing happens at the equanimity. So equanimity is the more mature state of mind. So that's why every time Buddha encourages, okay, you have to put yourself into the equanimity. Put yourself back to the equanimity. So equanimity is very much the balanced state. Not the uplifted, elated, blissful state, not the sorrowful, depressed state, but this equanimous middle state is the most healthy state of mind. So through the meditation, sometimes we come to the blissful state, and that also when we are living more and more, practicing more and more, we'll slowly switch back to this middle state. That is quite natural, by the way. So only thing is, we shouldn't fall asleep. Yeah. So because this is boring in a way. So when we are reaching this middle state, there is no excitement. There is no any kind of an entertainment there. So as a result of that, we feel bored and we can fall asleep. And we are not yet encouraging to just be there, because we prefer, okay, I need to go to the to the Sakmana because this is appear like boring. I am not progressing. So we get that kind of a attitude because we can't feel any progress, because we are simply stagnating like that. There are no events. But no events is something that we need to be familiar with, because we are very much like we are exciting our mind and try to be happy. We are in a way confusing our mind, exciting our mind, agitating our mind, and finding the happiness. But here we are doing the opposite. We are keeping the mind as much as possible very calm, peaceful, without much intentional work, intentional tasks. While doing that, we are trying to be mindful. So therefore, we need to familiarize with that state. We need to dwell in that state more and more. Then only the mind will understand, okay, this is very much like the home position. This is very much like a very natural, quiet, inner silence. So how can I just be in that inner silence? Something like that. Yeah, that's all, no? Are there more questions? Okay. Yeah.
Report number 3. This is from a very young yogi Bhante. Venerable Swamin Wahanse, is it normal to feel melancholy and sad for no specific reason? I get depressing feelings like that for no specific reason, and it dampens my mood greatly. I do at times try to identify my thoughts when they turn gloomy, but that doesn't make it much better. Please be kind enough to help me calm down those kinds of thoughts. Thank you.
In a way, actually, our human mind nature is very much like we jump into that kind of either, it can happen, kind of a depressive, ruminative kind of a thing, or we are imagining and fantasizing. So these are the two extremes sometimes we prefer to live. So it has become kind of a habit of the mind. It can become a habit of the mind. So sometimes there is nothing to do, so the mind automatically switches to something that we are worrying and not happy with, and then we start dwelling in that little bit of sorrowful state, and mind prefers to be in that state. On the other hand, the other opposite, the fantasizing, going to a completely imaginary fantasy state and just imagining that. So that's the other state. All are in a way constructions. So mind prefers those constructions. So mind doesn't want to just be, rather it always want to construct something, dwell in something constructed. So one option, actually, a simple option is that you are willfully, intentionally you are taking yourself out. Maybe you are now if this is from a young person, maybe you can do a little bit of joyful activity. Say you are enjoying some music or enjoying a little bit of sports. You are coming out of your room. If it is gloomy, if it is not that illuminated, you better come out from your room and be in the environment and talk to other people and have a little fun. So that is necessary, because we can't immediately find solutions, say very advanced solutions. So rather we need to cut off, we need to come out from this little bit gloomy, depressive kind of state. So you need to start associating some good friends, say your mother, father, whatever, and good friends who are joyful. So try to associate some people who are joyful. And on the other hand, slowly you can start developing mindfulness. That's also another option. So as you start developing mindfulness, so without allowing yourself to dwell in that depressive state, when the mind tries to go to that, so your mind can give you a kind of a warning. Again I am going to switch to that gloomy state. Again I am going back to that depressive state. So we are now willfully avoiding that, switching back to that depressive state. We are willfully avoiding that. And on the other hand, you can check, is there any kind of a particular thought pattern going on in that state? Sometimes we call as rumination. So there may be a repetitive thought pattern. Again and again you are taking during that time, and when you are going through that, ultimately you end up with depression. Ultimately you end up with a little bit of a sorrowful state. So you can check that also. Is there any kind of ruminative thought pattern? You are thinking again and again the same pattern, again and again the same incident, again and again the same incident, again and again the same incident. So you are very much like locked in that mental pattern. So that is something you need to take out. So that's what I mean. So recognizing that also would be useful, and forcefully taking you out and trying to jump to something else, say listening to music or maybe watching a comedy film or something like that. So that also would be useful, because we need some joy. Because right now we can't immediately find solutions through deep spiritual practice, because we need something for the time being. So they are, say, are taking you out from that depressive state, depressive mood, and putting you back into the kind of a joyful mood, joyful state. Maybe sports, yoga, etc. So that will be very, very, very useful. And yes, yoga also very, very useful, because while you are doing all these stretches, you can keep your attention onto that, so that depressive thoughts can slowly diminish, because your attention being driven to all these various stretches. And you are experiencing that physically, as well as your attention is also there onto those physical sensations. So you have given up that depressive ruminative pattern, but you are shifting your attention back to something constructive. So later, anyway, as you develop mindfulness, you can find more advanced solutions, more, say, lasting solutions. That could be another thing. Yeah.
I have a poem to read. I hope I'll do justice for that. Mindful Eating, a poem. The yogi learns the language of the elements. Sunlight falls on an apple on a plate for breakfast, highlights the miniature tiny holes in the flat boiled dough. So many pinpricks of emptiness, so many gaps, and still we say, this is a solid. In the sunlight's glow, the apple looks beautiful, more liquid than solid, shining with a sheen almost silver, burnt edges almost gold, and tears rise to the yogi's eyes without a reason why. The yogi puts the apple into a mouth, shaped whole. The apple turns to paste and then to almost liquid form. Lumiris makes the water rise in the yogi's nose, snot and phlegm, and something once called food slide down the throat, and heat rises to break it down. The sunlight dims. The yogi always knew that under this language there was another, under the words a wordless tongue, something primordial, like the sun. The yogi slowly learns that ancient, forgotten language. The yogi sits. The yogi breathes air. The yogi disappears.
Yeah. So actually good. So kind of an evolution is there. So at the beginning maybe luminaries, up, everything is there. But later, so you have to switch to that elementary language. So it doesn't have any apa, it doesn't have any luminaries. So what you have is just a taste. So maybe hardness, maybe softness, maybe smoothness, maybe roughness, and maybe watery, fluidity, maybe heat, cold. So likewise, so we are forgetting all these conventional terms that we have given and all the different preferences what we have given, likes and dislikes what we have given, and we are now switching into the more primitive, primordial kind of knowing system. It only has element characteristics. So when we are there, so you know only the element characteristics and you become no one. So basically the elements are operating and you are mindfully aware of all these elementary operations. That's it. Now that's why Buddha beautifully mentioned as a simile. So when a butcher finds out a cow to kill, so he is killing a cow, he is killing an animal. But after he dissect the carcass and then start making into pieces and selling, now what he is selling? He is selling the flesh or meat, isn't it? So the complete change in the perception has happened. So similarly in the elements meditation also, the Hathamanasikara, so we have to come to this kind of change in our perception. Previously we have all these conventional terms, apa and lumiris, but later all that has to be forgotten. And it's not that we are purposely forgetting, rather as a result of the practice, they take no notice in a way. So your mind discards all that information, all terms, but you are very much connected to that very primordial element characteristics. Yeah, good.
Most Venerable Bhante, thank you for the excellent sermon yesterday, which opened a different aspect to the feelings we encounter during sitting meditation. All this time, I was thinking that expecting a blissful session during sitting meditation is a sort of a craving. I have only observed the Patavi qualities during walking meditation. Going forward, I will observe the feelings during walking. Much merit to you for all your guidance given to all of us at Kalalgoda to progress on our Dhamma path. Looking forward for another good sermon today. Thero and Saranai.
Don't know whether it will be a good one. We'll see. So this feelings is a very broad subject, and we are in a way learning daily about that, and different experiences you may come across. So today, as you said, you are recognizing some amount of feelings and you are gaining some amount of understanding, and tomorrow maybe you are thoroughly observing and you get another level of understanding and another information. So it's a kind of a progress, kind of an investigation.
This yogi has written her walking meditation and sitting meditation. Like walking meditation is a very detailed thing. So shall I read only walking meditation first and then? Okay. Theruvan Saranai. Walking meditation. I commenced walking on a different fact today. I observed how the sand was warm under my foot where the sun had heated. I observed how the sand was warm under my foot where the sun had heated, the sand the cool where the shadows of the trees fell. The sand in the cool and wet areas would get stuck to the sole of the foot and travel for a second or two before falling off the foot. Sand did not get stuck to the foot where the sun had heated the sand. When I kept the flow on the areas the sun rays continued to fall, I observed how the sun's rays moved from falling on the ground to the top of the foot and caused a pleasant warmth on the top of the foot and a nice warmth from the previously heated sand on the sole of the same foot. It was 2 degrees or levels of heat. As the sun's heat got hotter and sharp, I observed the pleasant sensation of heat changing to a more unpleasant level, to a burning level, and observed I started to sweat. The foot now changed its preference from lingering longer on the heated surface to the more cooler surface under the shadows. The coldness of the sand seemed a nicer sensation, and the foot seemed to like sinking into cool sands. I observed how the leg that bears the weight becomes heavy and the muscles up the calf to the thigh become hardened to support the weight, and how the same muscles relax and soften as it lifted from the back and brought forward, and the same cycle continues with each step, with each foot. After some more walking, I felt as if my eyes wanted to close almost automatically. Within brackets, it was not sleepiness, and seemed to want to move to sitting posture. So I moved to sitting posture.
Good. Basically, little bit too much information. By the way, you are doing good. So that information, so more detail, so that it represents that you are now living with yourself. So your mind become less distracted. You are very much observing various subtle aspects of your experience. So your sharpness of the mindfulness is there, and you can distinctly recognize these details. Clear comprehension is there. So the information represents that the skills that we are developing. So just continue.
Sitting meditation. I focused on the breath. After some time, lights started to blink behind my closed eyes. Thoughts came and left. If I catch hold of a thought, I observed how it automatically resulted in a whole string of thoughts taking off at a tandem. It did not happen when I did not cling to the thought and observe it, arising and passing away as just an observer. I did drift off to sleep for a few seconds in couple of times but got back to meditating. I also observed how there is like a data command that travels to the limb before every movement of the limb and that the actual movement happens afterwards. That's all.
That's all. Yeah, all right. So that data command, it's what sometimes we call as the chetana, a little bit of a volition. It happens through the mind, and according to that little volition, so the physical movement may happen. So if you are capable of understanding this big picture, the whole picture, that's good, no problem. So now probably you can recognize now many information are there and everything is available to you. Now maybe you can recognize, you can select a little information and see how that little information evolves. Say for example, this chetana. So how this chetana, the volition, starts and how long it persists and how quickly it passes away. That you can do a little bit of experiment. Maybe if you are recognizing hardness, so you are trying to recognize how is it starting, how long it persists, exists, and how quickly it disappears. So likewise, now you are doing a very subtle analysis. Now many subtle information are available. Now select most prominent information and keep your attention there and see how they come and go. So that will help you to further strengthen your understanding more into the Vipassana side. Okay, that's all we have received. If you have any more questions, we can spend few more minutes.
As most of the reports are given by young and new yogis, if they want any more clarifications, please raise your hand, then Bhante will clarify you on your reports.
Nothing? Okay.
Then the chance for the others who has problems can talk.
No questions. And today also I like to repeat that same announcement related to the English retreat we are going to conduct. Bhante Dhammajiva mostly will take it at Nissarana starting from 7th. And I hope Ms. Dilrara has already put a notice on that. So please, if yourself or someone else is interested, positions are available, places are available. You can have enough space because the English retreats are not much occupied, unlike the Sinhala retreats. So this is something that I like to share with you. So if there are no more questions, then we'll wind up this session and we'll have the Dhamma sermon at 4 p.m. as usual. Thero Saranai.